you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. You hadn't said
Following
anything.
podcast may be
No one asked me a
explicit.
question.
One Joe Young presents Adventures from the Shed, a tabletop RPG podcast. You can find us online at adventuresfromtheshed.com.
And here we are, Adventures from the Shed. This will be part of our streaming series. However, this for session 0 will not be streamed. It'll get out there for everyone to view and to listen to. But we're going to be kicking off the campaign in Dungeon World. And Dungeon World is a system fairly different from Dungeons and Dragons. We'll still be playing in a medieval fantasy world type of setting. And when we get started, we'll be talking about some of the rules. I'll be explaining to folks who haven't seen or played it before. We're going to be going right from the ground up with this lovely group of folks. So we're going to go around and introduce ourselves. Who wants to go first? I'll say Jason wants to go first.
It's me. I want to go first, of course, because I was the first one in the room and the first one in the foundry, and that means that I just don't have any other kind of things going on, and I was available. So, but anyways, I'm excited to try this out. Finally, I've seen Dungeon World a couple of times. I've had some friends that have played it, and I'm excited to see it for myself. So yeah.
Cheers.
Okay, well, I was the second one in the room, but the last one in Foundry. Does that mean anything?
A little bit of something. When we determine it quantitatively, we'll have to let you know.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. Well, I am Aster. I will be playing something. We'll find out, I guess. But I'm here, and I'm Aster.
A squeaky chair.
Hi, I'm a squeaky chit. No, actually, no. My name's Randy, and I'll be playing a person of some sort. Well, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, let's go. Who's next?
Scooby-Doo.
Hi, this is Eli here, willing to be a squeaky chair for somebody for the right price. I have no idea what I'll be playing tonight. I'm pretty sure I have an idea, but I don't know what route I want to take with it.
Eli, we can't advertise that here.
It's not an advertisement.
Hey,
Chris.
Declaration of
and last
facts.
but not least.
Hey, it's Chris. I don't have much to say, I guess, because we're kind of just playing it. As Indiana Jones says, I'm making this up as I go.
It's no time for love, Dr. Jones.
Did he say that? I actually haven't seen those movies.
Just watch the first 3.
I don't think I said I'm Joe, but I am. So here we are. All right. So Dungeon World. It is a game that I first found in, I think it was 2014 to 15 timeframe. I'd seen it win like a Silver Emmy Award, then saw some advertising on it somewhere, and then I kind of latched onto it. Dungeon World for me, and for what it is a rules light game where you're really playing to see what happens next. Although there is loot and there is magic items and treasure and what have you, the whole point of the game is just to keep moving a story forward, whether it be through exploration, combat, etc. But we're going to get into that a little bit more as we get started. I have asked our players to take a look at what I know were the original core classes, I should say. There are a ton more now, but originally I think there were 9 or 8, maybe it's 8. But those are the ones we're looking at as far as a group to pick from. Chris is gone.
Bye, Chris.
We are.
He heard there was only core classes, and he's like, I'm done.
He was
my entire build was around one class, and I'm out.
Yeah. And the funny part is he is one that definitely wants others because he has played the game a couple of times and wants to keep playing something vastly different. But there are literally hundreds of, well, maybe not literally. There are a lot of classes out there that have been created by player communities, as well as some that have been released from the same folks who put together the Dungeon World system. But we are going to be going with what I think are the original set of classes: the Bard, the Cleric, the Druid, the Fighter, the Paladin, the Ranger, the Thief, and the Wizard. Of course, we won't have all of those because we don't have that many players, but we will have an amount of them.
You got Chris's attention back.
Yeah, Chris is back. What we are going to be, one of the things we're going to be starting with tonight is to get an idea of what each player was thinking about as far as what they might want to play for a class, what kind of character, maybe what kind of personality they want to play, so that we can then kind of look through and help fit a class essentially to what the player wants to play. Ideally, you don't want, especially to start, we don't want two people of the same class, because you can do so many things already, and classes have very specialized moves that they can do. So you pretty much don't want to have more than one of them. But if we really had a fight over it, I would bet to see who would be the winner, and then let both of them play the same one, right?
And I thought we all were going to be monks again.
Yeah.
That was everyone wanted to be in the last
Bye,
campaign.
guys.
Everyone wanted to be monks.
Was
Team
this
monk.
not the all monk game? I thought that was the plan after it aired.
Oh crap!
Half
Everyone's
the
gonna
party
start
drops
drafting
out of the
like
chat.
this. Yeah, done.
Monk World.
Monk World party time. All right,
Excellent.
definitely excellent, dude. So we've got those classes to pick from. Now, when you think about them, it's more of the, not necessarily Dungeons and Dragons perspective of the class name, but what would be more suitable to like a medieval setting, a medieval fantasy setting. The reason I mention that is a lot of times folks look at the druid and wonder where the spells are, but the druid's all about working with nature and elements, and the moves are based around like shape-shifting into animals, also talking with plants, things like that. It's more nature-based without spells. Then we have the two classes that do have spells, are the cleric and the wizard. Both of those have a spell sheet that goes along with the single-page character sheet. So they are what you would expect of the cleric probably being a healer, somewhere along those lines, definitely using divine power. And the wizard being able to create kind of rituals out of anything, and also having spells, and well, pretty much being the know-it-all kind of guy or gal. Then there's the ranger, and the big thing about the ranger in Dungeon World, I feel, is the animal companion, because you start with an animal companion, and that animal companion helps you with just about anything you do. It's kind of a neat thing. And then, of course, the ranger can be a sharpshooter with a bow. They have some very special starting moves as far as doing a called shot, being able to hit things wherever. And they're also very good at hunting and tracking. Then we've got the paladin, and the paladin is the holy fighter dude who very much believes in a cause. The paladin, the class itself, one of its starting moves is being on a quest, and as long as you are doing anything to forward your quest, you get bonuses. You're that much better of a paladin when you're doing paladin-y things. And then the fighter is the brute. Think one of the fighter starting moves is bending bars and lifting gates. It's doing the impossible based on strength, that type of thing. So it's based on that, plus using whatever weapons you want, all kinds of things that you might associate with a fighter. Then the last one that I didn't really touch on is the bard, and the bard is the smooth talker, the one who can figure things out, like jack of all trades kind of deal. Also, you have contacts in different places, and you may have some specialized kind of lore, which makes you very useful in a situation where you might be looking for treasure, or trying to figure out where something was lost once upon a time, that kind of thing. So that's a really quick talk over what we have there. And I think we had a couple of our players that had an idea of what they wanted to play already. Does anyone want to speak up first?
I'll go first here. I had two major schools of thought here. One was a kind of Monster Hunter type ranger, where he's really just all about the thrill of the hunt, not in a like fetishistic way.
Thanks for clarifying.
I wouldn't have thought it until you said it.
Exactly. Like no part of my brain was like, that sounds inappropriate until he said that.
Well, like I'm not going so far like the most dangerous game. More just like I like fighting big monsters because they're a lot of fun, and it's also gonna help people stay safe. And then the other one is a riff on a D&D character I used to play. Is a human fighter, but instead of being like the mercenary, the soldier, the trained for war, rah, let's do this. He's a conscript fighter, just wants to go back home to his farm. and he keeps getting wrapped up in these crazy adventures.
Cool.
I just want to go home.
Now, one thing, not that you can't do a backstory like that, but and you saying that just made me think of this. So I'm not trying to negate what you said, but one thing to keep in mind here is if you are one of these, the reason it starts with the, so like the ranger or the fighter, is you're the only one like this. You are badass. You start the game badass. Level 1, you're badass, and then your ass just gets badder as you go.
So the first one.
Yes. So you can have as meek or as powerful a backstory as you want, really, in this game, because what you are doing as we start, what you're capable of doing, no one else in the world can do. They might do things similar, but no one else does what you do. That you are top of your game, possibly the only one in existence. Like if we think, for example, the wizard. There might be a whole lot of enchanters out there, but there is only one wizard in this world. And this is that wizard.
And just looking at like the game mechanics, that's kind of what I was picking up on, which is why I thought to bring Thomas into it, because the fighter, the conscript,
got his name already too.
His name is Thomas.
Right.
Because in the game that I originally played him in, it started as a 10th level high magic, high fantasy, high shenanigans game.
Mhm.
He was already supposed to be this big epic hero. It's just his personality. Like, I don't want to be here. And he just, like I say, just keeps getting wrapped up in it, keeps getting better and better. He's seen as a folk hero, but like, I just want to go tend to my squash.
I'm not even supposed to be here today.
I was 2 days from retirement.
Yes.
At the age of 24.
I thought I got out of fighting. They pulled me back in. Who else has an idea of what they're looking at? I like, of course, because I felt like that fighter had a lot more interesting stuff happening. I like the sound of the fighter. Thomas, was his last name Thompson?
No, it was Thorane. It was Timid Thomas Thorane. That was his moniker.
So that's very cool.
Well, Eli gave a lot of information, so now I'm scared.
Now you're going to have to.
It's just because it's an old character I had.
That's awesome, though. I like it.
I do like that. I like it when they're like characters that are like really, really thought up, and then their name is not like actually as a last thought, but like you've actually thought about it and you were like, his name is Thomas.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just think it's really cool. I know I wanted to play like a thief. And I was thinking about like a your typical, because I feel like this is a very like classic take on Dungeons and Dragons. I almost said a take on Dungeon World. Because I feel like it's like a very like classic version of like Dungeons and Dragons, just the standard like pickpocket, like half cat thief sort of deal.
Sure.
That's
it certainly can be. Yeah.
That's kind of just here for the loot.
It very well could be. It really is. The thief itself does lend itself to a variety of play, because as we'll see when we look at some of these the character sheets, there are advanced moves, and you get an advanced move every time you level up. And some of those pretty much, it's like multi-classing or getting even more crazy within the class you're already in. Mm-hmm. So the thief later on can be doing a lot of other stuff, rather than just the first thing to grab, right? Every class has the expansion as you level up. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, my thought was just that like she's been doing this for so long, and especially with like the way that you describe Dungeon World, with like that is like the one, like she's kind of at a point where like she still will pickpocket and stuff, of course, but like she's kind of to a point where she's like looking for like a challenge, like something that's like exciting, rather than just like, I'm just gonna go over here and like it has to be like something big.
Like pickpocketing fighters who don't want to be working anyway. Hey.
Come on, that was my lunch money.
Hi, Thomas.
I want to leave.
My lunch money.
Mom, bro, you got a farm. Go make yourself a tomato sandwich. You're fine. You'll be fine.
I'm allergic to tomato.
Cool. He's got allergies too. That's awesome. Who wants to speak up next? Anybody?
I had a couple ideas. The first was maybe a perverted wizard who likes certain reading material that he reads. So spicy. But I was kind of wondering, like, if wild magic was part of this game. I can't remember if that was this or if that was D&D.
D&D was wild magic, yeah.
Okay. The other thing that I was kind of thinking of was maybe playing a cleric or maybe bard, because I got this Elvis Presley impersonation I was going to go do. I heal you. I thought it would be kind of funny to do. I didn't really think too much on characters. I was waiting to see what everyone else was going to say, what they were going to choose before I finally decided on something. So,
well, you and Jason are going to have to fight over who goes last soon. Well, Chris, what you got? The mute button. And
yeah, I definitely have the mute button. Well, the ideas for a paladin. I kind of want him to be kind of like how Lancelot was in the Excalibur movie, where he kind of like gave up his lands and his title and wants to go fight for a guy that's incorruptible, some guy that's definitely for truth and justice, but he hasn't found that king or that lord that he could put his skills to the test. And then side thing, also, he kind of knows a dark secret that he doesn't, not sure who knows it. And I want it to be like there's demons among the people, and sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't, but he doesn't know who's, almost like he doesn't know who to trust. Sometimes he can sense it, sometimes he can't, So he wants to find out more.
I love the Inquisition.
Yes, of course. We have fluffy pillows.
Yes.
Put them in the comfy chair.
Comfy chair. Confess. All right. Well, we haven't heard from you yet, Jason. So at least.
Yep. So the character concept can really apply to, I think, any class, which is, again, something I'm open to. I really don't care what I play as far as class goes, because I think going into this, not playing anything, it'll be a new experience regardless of whatever I do. So I'm fully open to going last in terms of class selection. But basically, the concept was an older individual, somebody who has definitely been around the block a bit, and again, leading into the dungeon world thing where you don't have increased health, really. You don't have any of that kind of stuff, as far as what I understand for the rules. You start off, like you said, as a badass, and you continue being badass. So the concept is one that the character has all of these abilities and really racks off instinct because he suffered some sort of either magical mishap or head injury on his last adventure, and really is trying to figure out what happened and trying to discern what his last kind of mission was, almost a la Jason Bourne-esque when it comes down to how he's doing things. So he could be a fighter, he could be a wizard that had a spell backfire, a spell happened to him that his memory is gone. But he does know all these things, and he is instinctually very good at a lot of stuff, and he's going to get better as he starts remembering more things as we level up and progress through the game. So that was the concept for the character.
I have an idea about that. What about possibly the druid? When you said, the first thing I thought was when you got knocked out, and then you said Jason Bourne. One of the actual starting moves for the druid is Born of the Soil, and the idea is you learned how to be the druid in a place where you grew up. But I'm thinking for your character, it might be wherever you got knocked out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I'm 100%
reborn as the druid at that point, because now you have all these new skills, but you don't remember maybe what happened before all that.
Yeah, I'm all for that here. So that was my concept, and I figured that could fit into almost any class, and it could fit in there relatively easily, and it would still be something that would be exciting to play, and something that I think would lead into whatever everyone else is wanting to do, since we're doing character creation all here together.
Now, that said, I will also add in there that one of my favorite classes is the wizard, because of the starting move of a ritual, which essentially means you gather some stuff up and just make something happen, right? So you can essentially you have to find a place of power. That's really the only world style prerequisite. Then you have to put in something that's valuable to you, maybe something that is specific to the ritual you're trying to accomplish. I'll give you one example. In the game I had played, the mayor's daughter had been kidnapped, and the wizard in the game said, well, when we get to the mayor's house, I'm going to tell him I need one of her hairs and a half burnt candle, and then we need to draw a chalk outline of a rune on the floor of her bedroom. And I'm like, it sounds like you're doing a ritual. They just made that up, right? That we'll do this, and essentially found a GPS tracker for the mayor's daughter by performing a ritual. So if that's the kind of thing where you think it's like just random knowledge comes to him, that kind of thing could be pretty cool too.
Yeah, no, and again, that's what I was leading into as well. Like I was going through each class trying to see where it would fit, and it really can fit in a lot of places. And it would definitely lead into the character getting attached to a group of adventurers that could potentially help them unlock these things or track them down, or maybe they're on a quest or a mission that, you know, I have a weird feeling that I need to be a part of this here. So I think it leads into things here, and I'm down to hear what everyone picks, and then we can determine what the best fit would be for that one here. If everyone's good with me going last in classes in picking.
Yeah.
The fight's over, Randy. You lost. So what you want? Actually, let's go back to Eli for a second. Eli, I like the fighter idea better, but you don't have to play something because I like it. What do you think between your ranger and your fighter ideas? Because both of them are cool. I already got attached to Thomas with a tomato allergy.
Well, it's as most RPG players can attest to, but I think in particular players who are also game masters themselves, when you have a character concept that you've used in a prior game, whether as a player or an NPC, it's a lot easier to get into the character for that.
Oh yeah,
and you may have a special attachment to them, but on the other side of the coin, you have something completely new that you've never done before that you're really excited to try out. I know if I did Thomas, I could do it well. And I never got to finish that game with Thomas because I actually ended up passing that character to a player who joined the game that it was one of their first forays into Dungeons and Dragons 3.5. So I was like, you know what? Here's a pre-made character.
Yeah.
Stuff's pretty simple. They're a fighter. They don't like being in combat. They're all about smacking the enemy and running away. That's what all of your feats are built for.
Yeah.
So do that and you'll do just fine.
Exactly.
And it ended up playing a dinosaur man druid.
You need to know your AC and your hit points, and you'll be okay.
So there's, I feel like I could get a lot of satisfaction from like actually going through a game with that character, whether there's in like a personal arc or not. There's a certain satisfaction to it. But I don't know, the idea of just something all new to sink my teeth into and develop and see where they go. It's very
cool. Do the new thing. Do the new thing.
So,
all right,
it's most likely going to be
do the new thing.
Randy, you really hadn't narrowed it down much, but if we're counting what we've got so far, Aster is going to play the thief. Chris is going to play the paladin. We're saying at this point, Eli is going to be on the ranger. And Jason doesn't have to take leftovers because there'll still be 5 to choose from once we get there, or 4, whatever it is. So there's plenty to go with. But what are you thinking, Randy? I mean, you said Elvis the Bard.
You know, I'm kind of a little bit done with the shtick. I think I'm just gonna. I've done the bard thing before.
Something's wrong with Randy. He's done with the shtick here. We need to send someone over to his house immediately.
A doppelganger.
He's done with that shtick and just needs another one. He's going to get shticked.
I don't think Les was very shticky.
I think he meant the bard.
No. Like doing the whole Elvis bard thing. I don't know. That's not me. I'd rather create a whole entire character situation of my own.
Artist.
So I'm Tom DeLong, and I'm here to be a cleric for you all.
You could always be Taylor Swift, T-Swizzle.
All right, so I think I'm gonna play a cleric this time around because I haven't played one of those ever in my whole entire career of doing this.
Factually incorrect.
Factual. What?
My one actually 2-shot.
Oh, was that a cleric?
Scruffy
Was a cleric. Oh yeah, because I
was not domain cleric.
Was he the bird murdering cleric?
Yes,
I thought he was a paladin because I saw him
Bird Daddy.
No, you can't be a cleric. You can't be a cleric now.
Just making stuff up, Randy.
All right, I guess I'm a wizard then.
I was gonna say, in all fairness, the wizard thing sounded really cool.
I'm just kidding. Cleric sounds.
I'm Stubby, Scruffy's cousin.
So,
Oh, boy.
all right, so I'm going to put the cleric for Randy here, and what I'm doing right now is I'm assigning owners in the Foundry tabletop here.
We're adopting.
Randy's that one. And I got to remember the different names that people pick between different systems because
I know what mine is.
changes. Yeah. Well, I got it. I got Aster B. All right, Jason, what you thinking now? So we've got the Bard, the Druid, the Wizard.
I'm down for either. Probably. I mean, I like what you were going with the Druid, but I also like Wizard, so I'm down for either one of those two. Whatever the group thinks, I'm good to play as.
Go for the
think-
wizard.
Reach into your soul. Decide.
Wizard.
I think that with the story you have, for me personally, I think I do agree that the Druid sounds like it would be really cool to play out that arc.
Oh, so we have Druid and we have a Wizard. We have 1 and 1.
Chris
I'm
and
calling
Randy,
out a
come on.
bias here.
All right, told him to pick what is hard to say. But...
See,
You played a druid in the last game.
All right, odds,
And-
wizard, even, druids. I got it.
I started by
Druid.
mentioning I thought the
Druid.
would sound cool, but I'd love to see you play a Wizard, so my vote would be Wizard.
Oh no, not
So
Chris!
Just
Chris,
Chris
I
now.
I just love to see Jason play the Wizard in this game because I like the way
What?
Jason plays.
Are we
But
off to
Marty
see the
was a-
wizard?
No, Marty was a sorcerer.
Okay, listen, he was a spellcaster. We've seen you play a spellcaster.
Marty was an affluencer.
He was an
But that's a good
affluencer.
point. That's a good point.
He was
That
an
was his
affluencer.
true class.
He was his own class when it came down to
He
it.
just happened to do some.
I don't know. What do you think, Chris? Wizard or Druid?
Wizard.
Wizard it is. I'll be the Wizard.
Oh, Wizard it is. All
You gotta
right.
name him Oz.
Oz? Why Oz?
What do you
The
mean?
Wizard of.
Oh, of Oz. Ah, yeah. No,
Should name him
that makes sense.
Zardoz. Name him
I, hope,
Zardoz.
I was pretty sure she didn't mean Dr. Oz, the Wizard. A little different, yeah.
Yeah. Guy's a wizard of idiocy.
Oh boy.
All right. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here. When I do this, I got to pick the right thing. So let me do that. You're going to see my view, the Game Master view in Foundry. So it'll probably be looking a little different from yours. But what I wanted to talk through is each person's going to get their character sheet going now. What I want you to do is go into the tab for actors. It says actors directory at the top right. Once you select that, you may have to expand the folder that says player characters. And what we're going to do is you're going to open up the one that is the character class that either you chose or was semi-chosen for you. We'll open those up. I'm going to open up the Bard one because nobody picked that one. So I've got that. When you first open it up, I'll tell you some of the things that you're seeing here and what we're going to do next. First thing I would say is don't change anything yet, because what we're going to open up first is a little character wizard. And if you do change something and the wizard goes away, we just have to recreate it. Not a huge deal, but just trying to save a little bit of time, wasting time explaining how I'm saving time, right? But you're going to see this is the blank, essentially blank character sheet. All characters have basic moves and special moves that you'll find on the sheet. And each one you can look through as we go. I'll describe some of them definitely tonight and also definitely while we're playing. I like to do that kind of regularly, especially when we're getting started. But what I want you to do is on the top right, there's this little dude with the plus sign. When you click that, you should get this that is essentially a kind of wizard for creating your character. It says level up on it. This will also come up every time we level up. So you'll be able to do changes and what have you there. So here's one of the things in Dungeon World. Almost everything you're going to choose on your character sheet along the, I want to say left-hand side because that's a printed one. It's not on the left-hand side here. But when it comes to choosing your race, your alignment, and your bonds, which we'll get to, those things, they're essentially statements that drive your character. These are things that your character is inclined to do. It isn't the entire makeup of your character. It is just because of this combination. For me, I've got in front of me for a race, I have elf or humid would be a sticky race.
Moist.
Bing. Now, when it comes to the bard, if you're an elf, you get this when you enter an important location. Your call, whether it's important or not, you ask the GM for one fact from the history of that location. So if you're the elf bard, you can do that. If you're the human bard, when you first enter a civilized settlement, someone who respects the custom of hospitalities and minstrels will take you in as their guest. So essentially, you get free room and board for anybody who recognizes bards exist. Then, when we go to alignment, this is a key one because as we end each session, we'll be doing a thing called end of session. In that time, we're going to be looking through different things. One of them is, did your character do anything that corresponds to their alignment in this session? If you can say yes, you get an experience point. And your experience to level up is your level number plus 7. So to start, you need 8 experience to level up. And as you can imagine, you're going to be able to get there kind of quick. We'll be doing level ups probably every 2 or 3 sessions, if not even more, because you also get experience when you fail. That's one of the ways to advance. So when I look at this bard sheet, and again, you should see something a little different on the one you're looking at. But for bard, if you choose good for an alignment, you want to perform your art to aid someone else. So whatever your art is, if you find a way for it to aid somebody during that session, you get an experience point. And the same is true if you're neutral, which is avoid a conflict or defuse a tense situation. Then if you're chaotic, you spur others to significant and unplanned decisive action. So it kind of describes something that might drive your character. Always trying to get somebody else into trouble, that kind of thing. For chaotic, that would earn you an experience. So those are very important things when you go to choose. Now, the other thing I'll mention is when you're doing your ability scores. Every class, just like in other systems, every class has their strong stat. And what you want to look for on your character sheet is your starting moves to know what your strong stat is. As you can imagine, for a bard, it would be charisma. Fighter is going to be strength. The ranger is going to be dexterity, although you can roll against wisdom for hunt and track. So it kind of depends on how you want to be that ranger. But what you'll do at that point is you'll start with an array. And in this wizard, you'll pick one of those numbers. The way these work, and it's kind of a different scale from D&D. So if you're used to the D&D scale, you have to keep this in mind. A 16 is a +2. A 15 is a +1. So you'll see you have both a 16 and a 15, a 13 and a 12. Well, the 13 is also +1. So you switch to +2 when you hit 16. And each level, you can add 1 to any ability score. So you can kind of start to map out where you want to put numbers based on where you think you're going to put levels. Your maximum is +3 at 18. So that's something to keep in mind. And when we start talking about that plus, that applies to your roll. There are so many things that you'll see when you perform a move. The vast majority of time, it will say, pick these criteria and roll plus charisma, roll plus strength. Roll equals 2d6. Everything in the game except for damage is 2d6. 2d6 is whether you're going to succeed or fail. And the numbers go on a 10 plus, you get everything you were trying to do. It's a success without consequences. You just get it. And as you can imagine, a +3 to get to a 10 plus on 2d6 is a pretty good bonus. Any bonus is really good because otherwise you're just averaged out. Well, in the middle of all that, though, is what is supposed to be the most likely part of the die curve, the roll arc thing, which is essentially 7 to 9, the numbers that are rolled most frequently without any modifiers. If you roll between 7 and 9 or from 7 to 9 on a roll, then it's almost always success with consequences. So say the whole thing you wanted to do was pick the lock. And on 10 plus, you pick the lock, no problem, you're done. On a 7 to 9, maybe you pick the lock, but it sets off an alarm. Or the guards on the other side hear it because your pick snapped and made an extra loud sound as you finish picking the lock. So you still get what you want, but there's a price to pay for it. Same can be true for When you go to attack something on a 10 plus, you perform your attack. That's it. You'll deal your damage or whatever the attack was. On a 7 to 9, you deal your damage, but the enemy also gets a shot back at you, whether it be just an attack or a special thing that the enemy can do. So that 7 to 9 is the middle ground. And then 6 minus is the fail. And it is just a flat out, you really failed this. I will put some circumstances around that, and I'll explain that in a minute. But the first thing to remember when you fail, mark an experience. This game allows you to roll horribly and get a more powerful character. Now, granted, in the meantime, you're failing at everything, so you're probably not having as much fun. However, it gives you that experience, which allows you to level up faster. So we'll be doing that. Now, where I say a failure can, I put certain criteria around a failure. It comes down to, let's say, well, what we're trying to do is your character's trying to maybe get up the cliff and it's super slippery, and trying to get up the cliffside. And it's really important that you get up there. Chances are, most of the time, I'll just say you're there. But maybe there's something hazardous there as well. And there's a danger that you're going to fall down into a spike pit or something like that. And when I ask you to avoid that danger, you roll and you fail. I may say you still barely make it up to the top. And then what happens is Joe pockets the failure. And something you don't want to happen is going to happen at some point. So we'll be able to put big events into the story, like you wake up in a prison, right? And that's Joe bringing up that failure that happened 2 sessions ago. I'll cash it in. And it's like, all right, in this session, you wake up in a prison. Now what do you do, right? And those big things that can happen. A lot of times, though, it will be as simple as, I'm playing a game of cards against somebody and we're playing for money and I'm going to try and outwit them. You roll and you fail. I'll just say, well, you failed. You didn't outwit him. He won your money. That's the failure happening in real time. But I'd say almost half of the time, I'll bank the failure so that we can create more tension and difficulties later. I think one of the things we'll see a lot is the characters are successful way more often than not. Once you start using your stats that have the right bonuses, it's really hard to roll a 6 minus. You're either rolling snake eyes or 3 on the dice at one point where you're like, that's the only way you're going to be able to fail. And because of that, there will be, it makes it easier to hold on to a failure for a more tense moment later. All right. So that said, when you match up your ability scores, think of the bonus number that goes along with it and where you want that. The one score that matters, the one numerical score that matters when we start, is you're going to have hit points equal to your constitution plus a number, which is on your character sheet. If you have the paper one, it'll be added, I believe, automatically here once we do things. So your constitution actually will determine your hit points. To give you a relative thing when it comes to hit points, when you get hit for damage, probably the most damage, like say a dragon's attacking you and it doesn't obliterate you outright, it might be a D12 of damage, right? So to give you an idea, if your character starts with 15 hit points and it never goes up all the way to level 10, I mean, a dragon still might not kill you in one shot, like that kind of thing. But then there are other things that you may just fail at something and it causes death. So we'll have the whole range of things. The game should be plenty gritty, chance of death at every turn or so. All right, so that's a whole lot of stuff. But one thing I have not done yet, aside from clicking through this myself, is to get a character all the way through choosing all of these pieces. So whenever somebody gets through that, maybe we can talk about the character that's been created. In the meantime,
yeah, it was done a while ago.
I thought we were told not to edit them.
What?
Oh, no, I was done earlier because Joe and I were messing around earlier with it. That's why.
Oh, yeah. When you open it up, you can change the name to whatever name the character that you want for the character. When you go through those, yeah. When I said don't change anything yet, is because if you change something before you click the character plus the wizard, you might not be able to select the wizard.
Okay,
that's what I meant. I probably could have worded it differently. All right. So, any questions on what you see in front of you, Eli?
No, sir.
No questions at all. What I definitely want to hear is when you get to the point of deciding what your animal companion is. I definitely want to hear about that because that plays a big part of the Rangers in-game persona in a lot of cases. Now, to be fair, it doesn't have to for you. You could pick a dormouse if you wanted and just
That's pretty cool.
do something crazy with it. But don't do something crazy with the mouse. Like you said, not in the perverted way. What about I'll pick on Jason since we got to him last. Anything you see that you have any questions on so far?
No, I mean, it all seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, excited to get into it. I just finished up the selection, so I think we're good and
Cool.
distributing of points.
Wait, so we can do it now?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
You weren't listening to the first time or when I just re-explained it to Randy, were you?
She has disadvantage now on all the things.
Disadvantage.
have you seen my rolls? I already have disadvantage.
I don't know. I think you had a pretty good run of rolls here. I think you're good.
I will say too,
The
just
last
as
game, last session.
just as a quick sidebar too, you guys, if you remember when we had used this a while back, you can change your 3D dice when you go to roll stuff under the settings for Dice So Nice. You can make your dice look the way you want. So when you're in Foundry, you can go into the configure settings, and then you pick module settings, and you should have one for Dice So Nice, and you can click that and pick the dice you want to use when we're playing. Remember, almost everything's going to be 2d6, so that you'll see that a lot. So if you're choosing different colored dice for different shapes, we most likely will not ever roll a d20. So keep that in mind too. Not that you need to do anything special with the dice. I'm just saying that if you're doing like maybe made a special decoration on a d20, it's not going to show up. All right, let's see. What about Aster, the thief? Thief!
Hello.
You see anything on the class that you have a question? Any questions about? Butte?
Not yet. So hear me out.
I will.
We all pick chaotic. Just saying.
And
It's not an option for me.
Not an option for me either.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Depends on the character class.
See, just like the thief can't choose good, right? The thief is
I have chaotic, neutral, and evil.
Yeah. And
all good options.
Each class has different options for race and alignment. And here's one thing too. If we get more familiar with the game and you guys want to expand things and maybe try a different character, I'd mentioned earlier, we have all the other classes that we could start looking at. This is a great way, I think, to get into it. But then also, I have no problem coming up with a different race or different alignment that might fit your character that we can just edit right into the character sheet. We can make stuff up. This is just our guidance to get started. You may notice, I think, in here that you have things to pick from for equipment or gear. Make sure you do that. Make sure you select the things for gear because those will matter. When it comes to it, almost everything is kind of a generic resource for the most part. One of the important ones there is the dungeon rations. It'll say a certain amount. Then you also have like arrows. I'm sure at least probably the ranger and maybe others will end up with a ranged weapon. When it comes to ammunition in the game, this is one of the things that is handled very much more on the story level than it is on a resource level. You don't mark off 20 arrows. The way it works is you start with 3 ammunition. You can do different things to add more or less, but you start with 3 ammunition when you have a bow. And the way it works is every time you go to use your bow, you're rolling for some kind of attack. Most likely a volley. If you're the ranger, it might be a called shot, something like that. It's only when you are not completely successful that you might lose ammunition. So on a 7 to 9 result, typically one of your options is that it takes you a couple extra shots and mark off 1 ammunition. And the way this is intended to work is, think of the action movie kind of thing where your hero, this kind of one where the guy storming through the estate, and he's just shooting everybody. And by the time he's halfway through, like, what does he have, a 200-round clip or something like that? He just keeps shooting. But then he gets up to the boss, and he points the pistol at him, and he clicks, and it's just out of ammunition. That's when that 6- roll came in. Doesn't matter. You're out of ammunition now. It's a failure. Boom. And it's a way to allow you those kind of action movie moments, the impossible moments of you just keep shooting. I mean, Legolas never ran out of arrows, right? He always had enough to shoot multiple on the string.
He ran out in the 2 towers.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But he also surfed on a shield. So
Exactly.
he had something in his back pocket. But that's the idea. It's story based more so than keeping track of how many arrows you have in a quiver based. And that fits a lot of the pieces here. You may have an option in your gear for adventuring gear. And what that means is when you need something that's applicable to adventuring, like maybe you want to, you need a torch, you want a rope, you want a grappling hook, whatever. You reach into your adventuring gear and you have it, but you have a certain amount of uses. Adventuring gear, I think the default is 5 uses of it. So you have resources that are generic enough so that you don't necessarily have to keep close track of what you've got. Make sure you go through that gear. I will mention damage and armor next. So damage, each character class has 1 die for damage. Now, you have other things that can do different damage. But for example, the wizard, I always think the wizard, if he's going to poke at something with the dagger, he's going to do a D4 damage all the time. But a wizard also gets things like, fireball and destroy the planet kind of spells, which aren't a D4 anymore. They're damage based on spells. The fighter, I think the fighter is a D10 or D12 for damage. Badass.
It's a D10, I think. Yeah.
And the idea there is it's the potency of the character class, regardless of what they're using. Although I have differing opinions at different times, overall, I like the idea that if a fighter hits you with a dagger, it's doing more damage than a wizard hitting you with a dagger, because the fighter just does more damage. And you don't have to account for strength. The fighter just does more damage, whatever he uses. And that's how that kind of fits. And then when it comes to armor is damage mitigation, straight up. So if you've got 2 armor and something hits you for 4 damage, you're taking 2. It's going to take the 2 away from the armor and that. Now, there are things that can damage armor. There's things that can destroy armor, of course. A lot of that comes down to failures. Say you're the fighter and you're a sword and shield fighter, and you say you're standing in defense of somebody and somebody attacks really hard and you're able to intervene, but your roll wasn't that great. You may roll a failure or something, and I let the attack, the damage goes away, but your shield is now broken, right? So you might lose that as just part of the narration, as part of the storytelling. So that's something to keep in mind. But anyway, armor, direct negation of damage. You should not expect at any given time that there will be more than, say, a D8 of damage rolled against you for any one thing. It's not a high damage game. It's more of when it happens, it should have an effect. There should be something that says, I got hit by something. It took more than 1 out of my 150 hit point kind of thing. It's more like it hit me, it affected me. So there has to be some kind of, I don't want to say just status for it, but there's consequence for it. That's probably a better way to put it. As we go, you might find that you get conditions based on your stats. So you may breathe in a poison fog and take the condition under Constitution, which is sick. And what that means is anytime you go to roll anything against Constitution, you'll have a -2 to the roll. All right. So you can get conditions that affect your rolls as they apply to the stat that it affects. Okay. Anybody else have anything? I don't want to keep just blathering on. I realize I was going to be talking a lot more this session than probably any other, but it's a lot of description for y'all.
Just mechanics wise, going through trying to set the character sheet up, I don't know if I missed her, if I'm just that bad at technology. But when you were talking about the armor, I picked all the the little bubbles and the equipment and stuff, and I had hit confirm. And it looks like you have to like equip stuff under equipment, but even when I equipped my armor, it doesn't change my armor number.
And I think that's because the Dungeon World system that we are using within Foundry is just less sophisticated than D&D. Of course, there's a lot fewer people writing for any other system than D&D. So when it comes down to it, a lot of this, as we're playing, is possibly going to be manual, and I'm guessing that's going to be a manual one. You probably want to click in the armor spot and just type the number, and then keep an eye on if it changes. If you're not using a shield, pretty much your armor is probably always the same.
Okay, so I have leather armor and it says 1 armor. So just write the number 1 in armor.
Yep, you should be able to click in armor and just type a 1.
Bet.
Yep. And then the same will most likely be true for hit points. You may have to fill in whatever the hit points is. I have
says
I
19.
calculated that. Yeah,
It
I
did
calculated that.
Cool. So let's take a minute and talk about bonds. Bonds is what forces the characters to interact. I like to word it that way because when you have a bond that you want to act on, your character is going to get bonuses. One of the basic moves is to help somebody, to aid somebody. When you roll that, you roll plus bonds. So it's however many bonds you have with that character. Now, you may not have any, which means it's a straight roll to aid somebody that you have no bond with, but you may have 2 bonds with another character. And when you do that roll to help them, you get a +2 on it. So bonds are very useful for that, but they're also useful as when we do our end of session. If you fulfilled any of your bonds, then we can either, we review the bonds. If you fulfilled them, you can mark an experience. If you think, based on the way the world's shaping up, it's no longer applicable, we can erase it, write a new one, and mark an experience. So if we can show at the end of any session that your character adhered to, fulfilled one of the bonds they have, or that it's no longer applicable and we're ready for a new one, you get experience for that. So it's another thing to just add on to the pile. And bonds can also keep you grounded as to why one character might feel a certain way about another one. So look, I'll pick on the wizard for a second here because I had that one open at one point. I don't now, of course. Now I'm going to say that. But in the bonds, rather than sharing it, I can just read what I see here. But there are 3 template bonds on the wizard sheet. One of them, or the first one, is blank will play an important role in the events to come. I have foreseen it. So there's, with that one, if you think of something like, if I put in there, the ranger will play an important role in events to come, I have foreseen it. Well, not knowing who the ranger is yet, I'll just say when Eli plays that character and in a session, he's integral to something, special or crazy happening. At the end of that session, Jason could say, well, he definitely played an important role here, and I foresaw it. And that's even can be played in-game session by the wizard encouraging someone to do something special, right? You're destined for greatness. Make sure you step out into the spotlight or whatever it may be, or step out into the crosshairs. But that kind of thing will bring those characters together because now the characters that have the bond have a reason to interact, and it's based off of something that's written. So I like to say in some cases it forces you to do some interaction that you might not normally do simply because it's a bond that you chose at one point to create with another character. So we could start playing and it could be that it looks like the ranger's never going to do anything important. So at the end of that session, Jason might say, look, Eli's not doing anything useful. I don't want this bond anymore because he's not going to play an important role in the future.
Oof.
I'm going to write a new one that says, I'm going to break the ranger out of his slump, right? And then there's a new driving force between the 2 characters. So that kind of thing, you can do it at almost any end of session. And if you start to think of links between characters, then we can add those in while we're playing, or you use these to create those links right off the bat. So you can use the same example. If that was chosen, that the ranger will play an important role in the events to come, Jason could say as the wizard, when he's studying at the library, he saw, Nostradamus's predictions about a ranger in the future, and he's going to work to make that come true, that kind of thing. And then could just pull all that together and say, we know it's the ranger that's in the world today. So there's so many ways you can use those in order to to force kind of a backstory and a present story. You can make it so that I think one of the ones in the Druid is I'm going to teach somebody to appreciate nature, something like that. And so that's another way that you can use it, is just put someone's name in there. And then even if you don't know that about the character yet, you can just start playing it and see what develops out of it. A lot of it really is playing to see what comes up next. And sometimes it's just a surprise development for your own character because somebody wrote you in somewhere.
I foresee that Randy will make a terrible pun at some point in time in this game.
Level up.
Jason's gonna level
It came
so
true
fast.
immediately. I am now level 14. Thank you, guys.
Done.
So,
Yeah.
completely unrelated to what we're talking about, of course. Which one of you would be most prone to be or become a criminal, hypothetically?
Yeah, the wizard might have been a criminal before he got
I
knocked
might
out.
have. That's maybe I blocked it out. All the horrible things I've done.
What are the poaching laws in this country?
If you're the ranger, you're probably making them up for the wilderness.
Fuck yeah.
That's the thing. You could be essentially say, the ranger as you play him is the warden for the western half of the continent or something like that. That you make the rules. If somebody's found poaching, you're the one that says what happens to them.
I foresee that Aster will roll the worst out of all of us in the next game.
Level up.
I remember when we were doing our Monday game. I remember I was tracking our rolls, and Aster had the worst rolls.
Listen, it
of
was
any
so
human
bad.
It was very, very unfortunate.
Yeah, the bonds here, different topic.
I foresee that Eli will have food delivered at some point in time during our game.
Oh shit, that's right.
Listen, get me some while you're at it. I could go for some Taco Bell.
Actually, fortune teller should be a role in this game that I should play.
Well, here you go. That's something.
That's the kind of wizard you are now.
That
There
could be
you
what
go.
your rituals are. Is all about fortune telling.
Like it's all about fortune telling, and they're all horrible fortune telling.
The bonds over here were for sure. Most of them were for sure written for a thief. So one of them is I stole something from blank. One of them is blank has my back when things go wrong, which is a sweet sentiment. And then it immediately goes back to blank knows incriminating details about me.
Yeah.
And then the reason why I asked that last,
they know you stole the thing from them. They're just waiting for the time.
It's a cycle.
Yeah.
And then the last one is blank and I have a con running. Hence,
you're looking for somebody to have.
So there's 3 bonds at any one point in time, though, correct?
I am fine with as many as we want.
Oh, Jesus.
What I like to do is no more than 2 between characters, because that +2 bonus is where I like to say, let's leave it there. Otherwise, you could write 6 bonds with 1 character, and when you go to aid them, you never fail, right?
Yeah.
And
that's what I was at. I was like, so how many bonds?
Yeah. And for me, what it comes down to is because we've got 4 others from any character, I think the most you should have is 8, 2 for each, but that's a shit ton. The reality is
I think 3 or 4 probably is where you want to be.
I was going to say, in my experience now, most people maintain 2, maybe 3, mostly because while you're playing the game, we get so wrapped up in the adventure that's happening that when we get to the end of session, we're like, oh man, I forgot to put that bond in. I'll do it before next time. And then we don't. And it's like, we never end up refreshing them. But
would you want us to make up the bonds randomly and then surprise each other through the game? Or would you want collaboration on bonds between each other?
I think it kind of depends on what it is. And I'd say, in a way, kind of use your judgment. And we'll just use the last example Aster gave there. Blank and I have a con running. I think it has a certain amount of appeal either way, as a surprise that somebody is a dupe in on a con, right? That they're in on it, but they don't even know it. That could be fun by surprising them. But at the same time, because it could be collaborative, because you can reach out to that player separately, and of course let me know so I can make it actually happen in the world. But if you reach out to them separately, then you could have a bigger secret that might have a cooler revelation later. Right?
Just years from now. Wait, you thought this was like a legitimate business? No, no, we don't have any of those. None of these people have received their t-shirts from Crimson Minotaur. Absolutely not.
Marty would make sure that everyone got their t-shirts. He loved giving out t-shirts and signing them and signing babies.
here's where that surprise could come
Signing
in.
babies.
When you thought everything had been shipped because you got manifest signed and all that, that's when you're let in that you were part of a con the whole time and nothing ever actually happened. Like,
Crimson
damn it.
Minotaur. Crimson
Marty
Minotaur
would
never
have-
existed.
I think Marty would have went nuclear at that point.
Oh yeah, he would have. He would have.
Make a whole new
Thought he
name.
was terrifying when he turned into a giant Crimson Minotaur. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I do have a question about the animal companion. Oh,
Esther's stepping away for a moment.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm doing the move the camera thing.
Yep.
I do have a question about the animal companion.
Yeah.
Mechanically, everything seems, well, I don't want to say self-explanatory, but easy enough to understand. I do have a question about the list. Is that set in stone?
Which list do you mean?
For animal companion at character creation, the wolf, cougar, bear, eagle, dog,
So
hawk,
the
cat,
type of animal? No. All I want to understand is when you've chosen something, how do these base stats fit? So you see on there, you'll end up with a certain amount of ferocity, cunning, armor, instinct. How do those fit the thing you chose? Like when I made the, and not real joke, but joke earlier about a field mouse. I couldn't care if you had a field mouse. It'd be awesome, right? But that field mouse is obviously not going to have the highest ferocity.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. Now, we could find a way to make it work in the fiction, but if we start by things that are close to rational, and then we can go zany from there, that's the way I usually like to look at it.
Okay. Follow-up question.
Yeah.
Are dinosaurs a thing in this world?
Only if you say they are.
All right. I have a dinosaur animal companion.
Most of what happens will be spoken into canon.
Dope. So I went with the ferocity 3, cunning 1 armor, instinct 2, and because I was looking at having a like a raptor, like a velociraptor, Jurassic Park style. And I figured the higher ferocity, higher instinct is a good way to kind of show that, because at least in popular media, dinosaurs are kind of shown to be a bit chaotic, a bit unpredictable, pretty savage. So I figured having the extra strength, but also having that extra weakness is a good balance and also good RP.
Yeah, that works. And what we're looking at there is when we mention those ferocity, cunning, armor, or instinct, those happen when you bring your animal in to help you with something, right? So sometimes you're going to add their strength, their ferocity to your attack, maybe, or you'll add their cunning to your attempt to maybe discern realities or something like that, where discerning realities is essentially insight and perception combined. It is what the hell's going on. That's a basic move. So that is how you'll end up using the animal. And where I want to find out where it goes for you is, what does it always look like? Your Rappy, the raptor there is going to
Rappy the raptor.
It's going to be everywhere you are unless you tell me otherwise. And it's always good to hear, all right, how does that then interact with other things? Like if you're using it to help with an attack, what does it do? Does it screech? Does it do that whole ambush coming up from the side kind of thing? Or what happens that you're able to add the bonus to what you're doing? Those are the things that I like to look for. And then you also see when you have a certain amount of ferocity, cunning, etc., you'll choose things that help define what that is. So with the high ferocity, it could be burly, or it could be able to be camouflage is one of them. So you have a lot of different things in there. You mentioned it could be very ferocious, etc.
Yeah.
These tags, and the tags mean what we think they mean.
Yeah.
Both literally and figuratively. They're both descriptive and prescriptive for us. We're able to say, in this case, for example, camouflage just means it's able to hold really still in front of anything, and it can almost blend into its background that way.
It's hard to see sometimes.
Yeah. Or it could be that it's like a chameleon where it can change its colors in some way. Camouflage just means it's able to blend with its surroundings in some way. We then take that and morph it into whatever it needs to be for Rappy.
Okay.
Right.
Dope.
Dope indeed.
Yeah. So I've already got the strengths, trainings, and weaknesses
Cool.
Penciled in, I say, writing in pen. Yeah, I've got huge, ferocious, keen senses of strengths. With huge, yes. So huge. I'm thinking. So I used to have a ranger that had a dino animal companion. It was a swarm keeper, and I just flavored the swarm as like a baby T-Rex, like in Jurassic Park 2, like about that size. So when I see huge, I'm thinking more along the lines of like an actual like full grown medium-sized theropod. So something more akin to how maybe the Ceratosaurus from Jurassic Park 3, the red one with the big old horn, or I guess the Pyroraptor from the new in quotations, depending on when the viewer is seeing this, from Jurassic World Dominion, something where it's roughly larger than a man. Like you look at it, you're like, that is definitely bigger than a human, even if you can't place its actual size.
Yeah. You just made me think of when I go on my YouTube shark attack rabbit hole, where it's like that shark, they say it's 15 feet long, but when you're seeing it in the water, it just looks about the size of a human. But of course, it has a tail and all that. Yeah, I think I get that, and I like that that kind of comparison. You know, that's bigger than me, but it's not that much bigger. I might be able to take that rapid.
I couldn't like wrestle it down, but like that's a good fight. I also went with ferocious. This is also playing into the like popular understanding of like media dinosaurs, where it's just go in for the kill and anything to just take it down. So it's like no holds barred. Keen senses as well. Keen senses specifically. I'm a big fan of the Jurassic Park movies. Okay. Keen senses specifically to reference the clever girl scene.
Oh yeah.
Where, and I know camouflage could have played into that a little better, but it's more so the hunter aspect of it, where it's like using tactics, getting up close and personal with your prey, and being able to find them. An inexperienced hunter being able to find them and put them in a corner. For trainings, I went with fight monsters because I am a monster hunter. I figure that's a good training to have. And for weaknesses, I went with frightening and savage. For the savage is kind of an extension of ferocious. It's so kill driven that it's almost it is like terrifying at a point. Like if the layman were to see my beast in action, it'd be more like that's your pet. Put that damn thing on a leash. Like it's almost offensive to see it hunt. And frightening, I mean, it's bigger than a person, dude. This is a lizard bigger than you that is very much eyeing you down and licking its chops.
And that's where these tags, like I say, we'll take them as they're needed. If you happen to walk into a place and you weren't expecting, full families of men, women, children, somebody's going to be frightened that you've got your Velociraptor along with you, because like frightening is part of it. It's the edges on its head are extra sharp, its teeth are extra serrated or something, right? However you describe it, its very visage itself will probably inspire fear in the young and possibly old.
I'm just imagining like going into a city, into a tavern, put a muzzle on it, like tied up outside in the front, put a muzzle on it, blanket over its head, a big old sign, "Do not touch," for your safety.
We don't serve them here.
Weren't there some horses out here before we came in?
No, that was a trick of the light. Quick, let's get out of town. Hurry.
Cool. Chris, you want to tell us a little bit about the paladin you're looking at?
What do you want to know?
Well, you already had a name because you and I hooked up a little earlier to get the technology kind of worked out, at least as much as we could at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, what kind of for me, it's kind of the quest helps determine a lot of what the paladin's drive is during the game, and that is where you're choosing what you're dedicated to. And there's a bunch of stuff that you can choose from. What piqued your fancy there?
Trying to look at the quest piece now. Well, there's only a couple things really for the quest listed here. For me, I kind of like the idea of like there's demons roaming the world and they look
Mhm.
human, so it's kind of like discover the truth of that.
Okay.
And then I don't really like the other two, the whole slay, the whatever, blight on the land, and then defend somebody from the. I mean, I don't know. I think those two are kind of weak.
Well, I think the first one, going with what you were saying, it could be slay the demon or slay whoever is bringing the demons into the world, because it is a great blight on the land, that kind of thing. So there are definitely different ways to look at that. You could be the slaying paladin, the one who wants to eliminate everything, but it sounds more like discovering the truth, more like an investigative paladin.
Yeah, I guess a little bit like why is this happening? Like what's letting these things into the world, kind of thing. Yeah, who's doing that?
And so the way the quest kind of works is while you're on that, while your every waking moment is dedicated to discovering the truth behind this thing, you actually get boons that make your character a little more, well, paladin-y, right? Did you pick what two boons were interesting to you?
No, because I wasn't sure when I get those. Like if I get them right off the bat, or if I have to.
It's right off the bat, and we can either come up with what makes sense for what you're thinking, and you just pick what you want, or I could pick a couple of things. But I do have to do the last one, which is the GM will tell you what vow or vows are required to maintain your blessing. So while you're getting these boons, I could make it so.
Yeah, I have what I want. Yeah.
Okay. So what ones do you think? The two boons. I say two. It's up to two. I can't imagine only picking one myself.
Yeah, senses that pierce lies and freedom from hunger, thirst, and sleep.
Cool. So while our paladin is trying to discover the truth of the demon people, he will not need to eat, drink, or sleep, and he'll know when anybody's lying. But during that time, I haven't picked something yet, but I will be picking something out of the what vow the paladin has to take in order for this to stay true. So it might be, let's see what I have here. Piety is one. So maybe the paladin really likes to do things that are all in his own best interest or something. And the vow he has to take is to help out some people at a homeless shelter and say a prayer for them every day. And if he doesn't do that, then he loses the boons. So there's something, you have a little bit of a trade-off there. For the extra powers you get, you're able to, or you have to perform some kind of vow for the deity. And that's something we can figure out. And we can also pick too, what, if any deity or code that the paladin lives by, it's a good thing to know. Because that's where you're going to derive your authority. As the maker of the old laws, I demand that you blank. And that's one of the paladin starting moves, which is I am the law. Essentially, you invoke your authority to tell somebody to do something.
I am the law.
Yes, I am the law. And there are a lot of these moves that have pop culture references from 10 years ago or longer.
Or more.
Yeah. They may reference things much older, but it's only about 10 years that this game's been out. So they can't have anything much newer than that with the basic stuff that I've sent you guys. So that's cool. Is I'm curious, the picked when we were looking earlier, is that the picture you're going to stay with? So is this a full plate mail paladin?
Well, I'd like to be, but I mean, I get to choose scale mail, so I don't know how that works.
It's equivalent, and in these purposes. Now, granted, plate mail I think might be one more armor, and there's no reason you can't just go find some at some point, or win it while you're questing, that kind of deal. But for me at least, depending on how it's polished in pictures or I should say drawings, either the scale mail and the plate mail can kind of look the same, and it could just be really big scales that look like plate, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be the tiny scales. Sword?
Yeah, long sword.
The long sword and shield, I assume.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't want the halberd. I didn't want to be two hands all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. can only choose human, so you have that.
Yeah.
Unless you want to talk about it, I won't ask the alignment. Some of the things I kind of want to keep on the side until we get to our first end of session, in which case people will start talking about if they were able to fulfill their alignment, which is where we can hear more about it too. So we don't necessarily have to go through expose on everything to start. But if you wanted to mention the alignment you chose and why, that could be neat too.
Sorry, I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle of adding stuff to my thing, so I can't see the screen right now.
So either lawful or good. Lawful is
I
denying.
think I just want to defend somebody, right? Yeah, that's the one I picked. Because the other one was
good, endanger yourself or protect someone weaker than you.
Yep.
Okay. So sounds like a protective fella. That's cool. All right. What else we got? I think that might be a good cover for the paladin. What about I don't know, Aster, you got anything else on the thief now that you may have looked through and added stuff?
Yeah. So
you can edit it.
Is it not doing something on your, like I picked all my stuff, I think.
As you said, oh, I can edit it now. I was just
okay.
That again. Sorry, the same dead horse. I just kicked it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's pretty basic. I think that I picked everything. The thing that I think stood out to me though, that like is yes a very like classic roguish thing, but I just didn't expect to see on it, is that it has this like poisoner thing.
Yeah, the poisoner can be very interesting. First off, you never even have to use it if you don't want to, right? You don't.
Oh, I want to
use poisons.
It's about to become a part of my character.
Yeah. So what it does is it gives you 4 different kinds of poison that you can specialize in, and there are different ways that you can apply them. And you pretty much how you figure out how you're going to do it, right? You're able to make these poisons, and you're able to apply them to whatever purpose, and you get to pick all that based on the situation. So say you pick the one that tries to put somebody to sleep. And now I won't read them all, but I know one of them is you can use this oil, applying it to put someone to sleep. So applied means it just has to touch something that touches them. You don't necessarily have to touch them, right? So you could put this oil on a spoon and they eat soup from it, and then that kind of you have to come up with the idea of, all right, how do I use it in what situations? Because that could be you could be knocking out the guard by putting this poison on his lollipop, so he just sucks it and falls over. It could be that you're actually in the middle of a combat and you're sneaking around the battlefield. You might choose to go in there and try and knock out one of the bad guys just by putting him to sleep with this poison. There are different ways that you can approach that, and each one, of course, has different things it can do. So
I thought it was really neat that, and like from what it's saying, of the 4, you can pick one that just does not affect you whatsoever anymore.
Yeah,
but they're basically, there's sleep, there's a damage one, there's one that effectively sounds like a mild charm person, and then the last one is literally just it gives you advantage.
Yeah, and it's like I say, it's the iocane powder thing. You can share a drink with somebody and they can be affected.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna make a dread pirate.
Yes, the dread pirate Roberts. I miss the guy.
All right, guys. Different character idea. Hold on.
One of the things that I feel like sometimes it doesn't come up enough for the thief is the whole trap expert piece. And the reason I mention it is because
I love traps.
It says, as part of the move, the description is when you spend a moment to survey a dangerous area. A lot of times I think players don't interpret that the area they can be in can always be dangerous, right?
Like it doesn't have to be like a dungeon or a cave or
right. It's typically, I think the wording there is typically to make you think I should use this when there is danger of a trap or danger of something catching us by surprise. Not necessarily the area itself is considered dangerous, but that there may be a danger nearby that I can detect. That's the one of the things that I would mention, because I like to see that kind of thing happen when you catch the trap before it goes off. And you don't always have to be I use the old trope of in D&D, and you're in the dungeon. All right, I move 1 square, I check for traps. I move 1 square, I check for traps. Right? We don't necessarily have to do that. It's just we're going into, maybe it's just simple as a dungeon. We're going into a dungeon. I'm going to be keeping my eye out for traps. I could let you roll at any given time, and I would tell you to roll if I wanted to give you a chance to do something. So it's really up for debate. Not even debate. It's just up for circumstance. I like to make sure that every class, every character is able to do something that's special to them as much as possible. So if you just check for traps somewhere and you're successful, it might not even be a trap, but it could be more like a decoy or something like that, something designed to throw you off track of something else. It doesn't always have to be, a spring trap with a poison dart. We'll find ways to use it to make sure that you get your character's abilities in there, especially the ones that you think are fun.
I know a lot of people like rogues for like the sneaking and the sneak attack aspect, but like the whole trap thing is actually one of my favorite parts of the rogue class or the thief class.
Very cool. Yeah. When it comes right down to it, in this game, damage is damage is damage. It's almost more like the effects, the conditions, the infliction, the bad thing you can do is at least as important as the damage you've done. Like if you tell me, for example, you're going to try and chop this guy's arm off and you roll and you hit, even if you roll a 1, you're going to do some serious damage to his arm. His arm might still fall off because you rolled and you were completely successful, but you rolled low damage. So you still got to chop at his arm, but it's not enough to kill him, but you really hurt the guy's arm, that kind of thing. Those are the things that are going to be just as important. Your description of what you're trying to accomplish right up until the roll happens is most likely what's actually going to happen. So instead of thinking of something like, I'm attacking him, I roll to attack. It's more like, I'm leaping over the table and pointing the dagger directly at his heart as I charge in. And then if you hit and do the damage, maybe you pierce his heart and he's dead, because that's what you wanted to do. It doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to happen, because you can roll and fail. But the description of your action is what's going to make the next thing happen. We're going to be doing things where initiative doesn't count. All that matters is everybody gets a turn to act when they want to act. There are a lot of conditional things that you might think in D&D, flanked, all that stuff. That's not as important as what happened last, so we set up what happens next. I go to stab the guy, I jump over the altar with the dagger out and go to stab the guy in the heart, and I hit, but I don't do enough damage to take him out. I'm already there with my dagger, and maybe somebody next to him pushes him forward onto the dagger. There's no like rule for pushing someone forward onto a dagger per se in D&D, but in this game, you're just performing an attack. I'm going to attack them. I'm going to force them onto the dagger that the other guy's holding. You hit, you roll your damage. So you could end up doing that kind of thing based on how it was set up, not necessarily what your move might say, or if you were successful on the last one. There's so many pieces that run together. I'll regularly refer to it as camera views. Now we're going to switch the camera over to this side now, where the paladin sees these two embroiled in combat. What do you do about it? We'll be doing that a lot as we go, mainly to just keep everyone involved, but also to show that it should be pretty fast moving. That's not to say we can't get bogged down in details. It's still very fun sometimes just to sit in a room and keep trying to discern realities, or as it would be, perception / insight. You could just be trying to figure out puzzles for days and just sitting still. You could do the whole thing of, all right, I want to check this drawer, I want to check that drawer, I want to check that drawer, that kind of thing. We can get into details as much as we want. We can also just go from story arc and completely finish it in one session as part of the overall campaign, rather than going through a chest of drawers for a day. Right? There's so many different ways to handle it, and that's a lot of me.
Did you say which vow I have to follow?
I hadn't picked yet, because I want to think more about your character. Because I think, like, for example, I wouldn't want to pick truth, because you already have senses that can pierce lies. So I feel like you can already tell what the truth is. I'm not going to force you to tell the truth as well. It just feels like too much truth in there.
It kind of makes sense, though.
I want you to. My thought is, I want you to be able to use your own lies to manipulate people that you know are lying to you, possibly, right? Depending on how you want to handle that. But there are different things. The first thing I'm thinking of is I might choose hospitality because you would be required to comfort those in need no matter who they are. And I can see more than one situation where a demon person is in need. And you would be forced to comfort that which you are trying to
Yeah,
eradicate.
he probably wouldn't. He would just kill it and lose his boon.
Yeah. And that's the kind of conflict that I'd be looking for somewhere. And it wouldn't just happen, right? We'd have to have a reason for it to happen. And it probably wouldn't be that drastic the very first time. But that's the kind of thing I'm thinking. So for now, most likely hospitality. All right. Who hasn't spoken up yet? I think Randy hasn't.
Oh, I've been struggling to put this kit together because it wasn't easy. I didn't realize you clicked on the person plus to put in a lot of your details at the very start. I missed a little
We can
step.
tell who
So
wasn't paying attention in class tonight, folks. And they're on the right-hand side of your screen.
shh.
It's me.
Okay, so I named him Elias. He I don't know what kind of info you want to go. I think what I want to say about him is that he was abandoned by his order, and he wasn't really sure why, but he still follows his god, or goddess, as it were, who I named. Where's it moves? No, yeah, Bethany the Pure.
You do choose a deity.
Yeah, named her Bethany the Pure. She is a healing and restoration goddess, and I was supposed to choose. What is that? A precept of my religion, and it shows
the religion. Yep.
Yeah, it shows it believes in a trial of combat. Yeah. So it says adaptation, personal victory. I went with that. So
I think that's almost an interesting. To me, it is almost a conflict, and it is interesting to say it's the deity of healing and restoration, but you believe in trial by combat. I guess maybe you need doctors because everyone's always beating each other up.
Oh, for sure. She's like, I believe in healing, restoration, but I also want you to prove your worth as well. And we'll heal the fallen.
So one of the neat things with the cleric is the divine guidance starting move, especially once you've chosen that domain of healing and restoration. If you petition your goddess for something that goes along with trial by combat, you can be granted not useful knowledge or a boon. So, it could even be something like, say you're investigating some illegal fight club and you want to know something about it. Maybe investigating might be the wrong word. Maybe you're just interested in it and you want to know something about it. Because a fight club is like trial by combat, you could actually petition the deity to give you useful information about it, like who's going to throw the bout in the second round kind of thing, and you go gamble on it or something. But there's that kind of piece. That's that whole divine guidance. As long as it's within your sphere and the precept that you're focused on for your religion, then you get some little extra stuff out of that, which is pretty cool.
I chose a human, so I was able to choose a wizard spell. Am I allowed to choose magic missile as my spell?
One wizard spell as if it were a cleric spell. So as a cleric of level 1, you get, oh crap, I got to remember what it is. New spells of your choice whose total levels don't exceed your own level +1. So as a new level, or as a level 1 cleric, you can choose any amount of spells that equal up to 2 levels. So you could choose actually to start, you can choose 2 level 1 spells, but you can also choose any number of cantrips, 0 level. Cleric, I think it's rotes. But the rotes are, you can always prepare them. So you pretty much always have those. Then you choose the others. So when it says as a wizard, you could pick 1 wizard spell at level 1 at this time. Later on, it's possible that we may be able to petition your deity for a level 3 wizard spell. Right? It would be something that we could change if we wanted to, or if it was something that you felt would be useful later on.
Yeah. Actually, looking at that's a magic weapon. Never mind. It looked like maybe it was on there for some reason.
So it can be any cantrip, because you can do any cantrip at any level, as long as you're able to cast those spells. And it could be a cantrip or it could be a level 1 spell, because you're able to cast level 1 spells as a level 1 cleric.
Okay. Well, then I'm still putting this together, but that's the gist of what I have so far.
Cool. And one of the things that is kind of a standard with clerics is a way to deal with the undead, and there is a turn undead thing with the cleric. So you're able to being the cleric, you're able to affect the undead in ways that nobody else can. So that's a thing to keep in mind. I am sure you will encounter some undead at some point here.
Awesome.
All right. What else we got? Jason, back
Yes.
about the wizard. I know you've gone through a few things there. I'm flipping to my paper here because it's easy.
Yeah, I mean, wizards at first level seem to be pretty straightforward. They don't really have any advanced moves or anything like that here. So it's just basically they get all their cantrips. There are 3, and then they have some first level spells they get to choose from and prepare, and they have the ritual ability. So I mean, everything seems pretty straightforward. In terms of what's on there, I chose if we're going over race, I chose human. In terms of race, I'm not going to go over, of course, alignment because we're not going to talk about that or anything like that.
So as a human, you got the reverse of what Randy got. You
Pretty
get
much
to pick a cleric spell.
Exactly.
Cleric gets to pick a wizard spell.
High five.
Exactly.
Yes, same idea. Yep.
Exactly. That was my first bond, picking a spell that's from another player's class. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, it looks like the real kind of interesting stuff really kind of takes place once you get the advanced moves for the wizard. So I'm excited about that in terms of the level up. So looks like there are a few cool things that you could do to manipulate spells or have just expanded utility. So that looks pretty cool. I mean, I didn't.
One of the things I was going to mention that, like I was mentioning with the thief, where the trap skill I think tends to get underused. One thing that you want to keep in mind is the spell defense skill. One thing I find pretty common in the wizard piece is as long as you have an ongoing spell, think concentration from D&D. It's the same idea. You have to keep the spell going. You have to think about it, concentrate on it, whatever. As long as you have one of those going, you can dispel the energy of that to deflect an attack, which is kind of neat. And I've seen multiple times where somebody has the cantrip of Unseen Servant, which is you pretty much have somebody carrying around your books for you type of thing. And whenever something might hit you, you dispel your servant to avoid the attack. And that can be kind of neat. And I think that's just one example of how it could be used. You could be doing the same thing with a light spell or something like that, right? But it's something to keep in mind because the wizard is squishy, not particularly a lot more squishy than others, but you definitely don't do much with armor until you level up. If you happen to take any of the advanced moves that help you with armor, it can help, but otherwise the wizard is usually the one that doesn't have any armor, as it can be expected. So that's cool. Did you have anything special, like out of the first level spells, you're able to pick a couple of those? Was there anything that really was like, that's what I want? Of course, the magic missile.
I would like to save the spells for the actual game. So I know what I'm doing already. I think, but I'm going to keep them for the game here. Since my character doesn't necessarily have all of his thoughts as far as stuff goes, because again, he has a kind of a form of amnesia, or maybe it's amnesia, maybe it's something else that's blocking his memory. Maybe he's blocking something out and repressing things on purpose. We're gonna have we're gonna have some spell reveals, which will be, I think, fun.
Very cool. All right. So what I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about. Did you want to mention anything else with?
No, I was gonna say is whose characters starts with the A? Is it Aoife, or how is that for the A character
Aoife.
on the Aoife? Okay.
Aoife.
Make sure I'm looking at everyone's names because I'm trying to think of a name for my character right now. It's an Irish name.
If you didn't know this already, you can upload your avatar as a picture from your computer. I was able to thankfully set it up that way, so you guys can kind of set it up on your own. And one of the things I'll do as we talk more about the technology, probably next time, but I'll drag your character out onto the screen so you can see what the token looks like compared to the avatar, because they can be two different pictures.
So we have 2 E names and we have 2 A names.
Yeah.
So do I want to go like directly in the middle of both of those, or do I want to try to unbalance the A's and the E's?
Honestly, just a little quirk I started doing a while back is just all of my D&D characters have A names.
I like it. Aoife is a great name.
Cool.
It's spelled like insanely because it doesn't sound like Aoife.
Because it's Gaelic.
Gaelic.
So as I mentioned, we'll go over more of the technology probably before we start next time. I'm trying to think, because I'd like to fit it in there before we actually get to before we get to some gameplay. In reality, we're going to be using Foundry mainly for dice rolls, but I will plan on putting out maps only for visual reference, so that a lot of times when we're only playing Theater of Mind, sometimes you can forget what the battlefield looks like, and if we just have a basic map and some tokens on the screen, you can at least remember I might be about that far away from the ogre, or whatever the case may be. We will never count 5-foot squares. Don't worry about how far away you are. Far in Dungeon World is near, hand to hand, close, far, medium. Those are different tags that are put on things, and you get a sense of what that is. Am I close to him? Yes, you're close. Can I reach out and touch him? Yes, you're in hand to hand, right? Those things will just come up as we go. Definitely, we won't focus on where things are in distance on the map, and we won't care about squares. I may even turn off the snap to grid stuff so that we can avoid that as well. What I wanted to talk about a little, what was that?
Oh, I was just going to say, so near, far, wherever you are, will hit you.
Yeah. There's Elvis the Bard taking a step out.
All right, Jason, level up.
Yeah, do I get a bond? I get a bond point for that, right? I predicted it.
Exactly. I mean, Jason's already level 14 in a game of a max level 10. So, Randy, thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to help.
But what I want to talk about a little, and I think I can put this up on the screen. So, let me find it. I'll take a minute to find it. If you guys could just talk a little bit about how your characters might know each other. If you already know you have a bond that you want to talk about with someone else, maybe bring that up.
Listen, if somebody's interested in running a con with me off the bat, let me know.
I have no respect for the laws of civilized folk. I'm more than down.
So Eli and I are best friends. Established. Next.
Whoa,
best friend, BFFs.
That's a big commitment here.
I
already got a best friend.
If you will.
You guys have matching tattoos, A&E?
It's like B&E, but different.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the easy way to display this, and it's not as easy as it ought to be. Keep going.
Chris, I wanted to actually speak with you for a second about bond that I wrote in. Blank keeps me informed of new monster sightings, so I try to find information for them. I don't know how much you want us to know about your characters, like goals and whatnot, but I do think it's vague enough to where, like, yeah, we do have a connection. I don't know what he's doing with the information, but hey, he keeps me employed, so to speak. So
Yeah, it would depend. It would be something if I saw something I never saw before, and I'm like, well, what was it? Because I don't want to like just say something and they're like, well, I'm talking to a demon right now. I just don't know it. I don't want to like give it away. Because I don't know how prevalent.
Well, maybe that's why you have him employed, because even though he gives you some information that really don't care about, you're just getting information about just random monsters and events. So
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, but I might not know. I might not tell him what's up.
Yeah, but maybe that's how he knows you, though, is that the fact he just gives you information on things.
Yeah,
whenever he's in town, he's like, oh yeah, I got a guy who will pay me a couple of coin if I let him know about the monsters that I've seen out there, and then you don't have to really tell him what you're doing with the information. It's just, you know what, I'm a paladin. I'm doing paladin things. So give me monster information.
Yeah, he's on some grand quest or whatever. Asked me to keep track of like noble movements. I don't pay much attention, but like, if I know, I know.
That would work.
Cool.
But then even Randy, your character, I could probably know you some way too. But I don't, since you're a cleric, but depends.
Which one's your character? Aravir?
Aravir, yeah.
Aravir.
My character could go with anyone pretty much, because even though he followed a deity or a god or whichever you prefer to say, it's not like
it's actually going to be what you prefer, Randy.
Deity.
You are the cleric.
A deity. He wasn't like a soldier or anything in some army. He just was some dude who had an organization, but now it's gone. So he's just looking for anyone to get some answers. So
could be reformed clergy as well. Could have spent a lot of time as a younger person doing a lot of crime. And
look, I don't care who you are or what you do, but I want your help.
Nice. So I want to talk about the things that we're going to be doing the most often and how they work in the game. They're called moves. So we already talked about some about each character, each class has specific moves for that class. So they're the things that make you what you are. So if you're the paladin, you're being able to say, I am the law, being able to try to force people to do things you want based on authority, or maybe not even force, but coax, whatever it might be. That's the thing a paladin does. So in reality, we're not going to have anybody else doing the same kind of thing. We wouldn't have the ranger shouting at people based on his natural authority kind of thing, because that's the paladin move. However, when it comes to basic moves, and for that matter, what's the other one? Special moves that we'll talk about here too. These are the ones anybody in the world does. The ones that are used most often are the ones I'll go through first. Hack and slash is what you might expect. If you're in melee combat, if you're attacking something hand to hand or hitting it with a sword, hitting it with whatever, as long as you're in melee combat, you'll be rolling plus strength. And you can see if on a 10 plus, you'll deal your damage to the enemy and avoid their attack. At your option, you may also choose to do more damage, but expose yourself to their attack. And if you roll a 7 to 9, you deal your damage and the enemy gets to make an attack against you. That's that success with consequences there, a success with a fee to pay. And as always, 6 minus means just a fail. Some of the moves you'll see actually have a consequence for 6 minus. Most of the time, it's a failure. The GM's going to handle what the failure means. And a lot of times it'll just follow naturally. I'll keep going back to I'm leaping over the altar to stab him with the dagger right into the heart, and I roll a 6 minus on that. I get tripped up on the altar and I land on the floor next to him, and my dagger is rolled into the middle of the room and it's not in my hand anymore. It's like, that's a failure for that move you tried to make, because you were in momentum and trying to vault this thing, and it just makes for a bigger failure right there. Or it could just be, well, you go to stab him and it's, I could say he's a hologram right now and you completely missed through him. Like, he could have been an illusion, something like that. Or even you get there and you hit him, but it has no effect. And then I hold that failure for later on when, it turns out that this guy's actually made of diamond or something, right? There's something that is very different about him, very special. So that hack and slash, that's your regular attack, your melee attack. And then the next one I'll mention is volley, which is the ranged attack. So as long as you're attacking at range, whether you're throwing a rock at something, shooting a bow at something, as long as what you're doing, you're taking the time, you're going to take aim and try and hit something. It's not just like throwing caltrops down on the floor. That's not a volley. That's just throwing something down on the floor, right? There's no roll necessarily for that. A volley is when you're trying to hit something, and that's where I mentioned before. If you have a 10 plus, you just deal your damage, move on. If you have a 7 to 9, that's when you have a chance of losing ammunition or dealing less damage because maybe you have to move a certain way to get in a good shot, what have you. Those are the two that will come up with attacking. When it comes to defense, this is something that I find typically isn't used very often. I'm not sure if it might come up with Chris being a protective paladin, but you can actually choose to stand in defense of a thing, person, item, or even location. And while you're doing that, or when you choose to do that, you roll and it's plus con. Depending on what you roll, you hold a certain number, and then you can use whatever that number is for different things, like redirecting an attack that came in, having the attack's damage. You can open up the person that was attacking to give your ally a chance to hit them. So there's different things you can do there for defense. I find typically that when we're in combat, it's more like I'm going to dodge that one and then attack him or something like that. We don't think about defense too much, but it is the other piece of combat. Outside of combat and just in general in the world, whenever something bad could happen, whenever there's a danger there, an imminent danger, something that it will affect you now, you act despite that imminent danger and you try to defy it. And what you'll do is you'll pick the stat that makes the most sense for what you're trying to do. They have examples here. If you're trying to power through it, you're going to roll plus strength. If you're trying to get through it with quick thinking, you'll roll plus intelligence. And you just kind of describe what your character's doing. And I like to think of different ways to like approach stealth. A rogue might approach stealth saying, I want to do it by using dexterity, and I want to get behind him really fast, so I'm going to use my agility to kind of sneak around back and catch him. And a wizard might say, well, I'm not really fast or dexterous. However, I'm going to study each pebble on the floor and look for which ones might move and make sure I don't step on those. And then you're trying to go through it by thinking, and that's the intelligent part. So you've got a lot of different ways to approach just about any danger. And as long as you've got a description for how you're doing it that applies to the stat you want to use, that's how you will defy that danger. Chances are I will never tell you roll defy danger with dex. I'll say this is the danger. You will choose to defy it with what stat you want. It's very rare that we can't figure out a way to make a certain stat work. Although it does happen. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense to say anything other than there's an arrow coming at my face, I duck, right? And then that's dexterity. We might just roll dexterity because you can't think of anything else that makes more sense. That'll come up. But this defy danger will be one of the things that will happen anywhere in the game. And I'm using it as a transition from combat to everything else because it happens in combat as well. If, say, call it a surprise round, you walk into a place and you're being ambushed. And what happens is the players always roll the dice. You may notice during this game, except for maybe within Foundry and some tables or something where I roll on a table, you're not going to see me roll dice. I will never roll to attack you. It is, I am attacking you. You are choosing what to do with the attack, right? So you walk into the room, you're being ambushed by goblins. You got 5 goblins coming at you, pointing their spears and charging at you. What do you do? And if you do not choose to defy that danger, you will take the damage from that attack because they are attacking you and you are getting hit unless you do something about it. So you first choose to defy that danger and then probably go along with an attack of your own. If you do not choose to defy the danger, then the danger will happen, and that will happen for everybody. So it's pretty much the world's out to get you, and what you're doing is not get gotten and then go get your own as well. Defy danger will happen a lot. It'll probably be the one that we go back to most often. Discern realities is a roll plus wisdom, and it's really when you're trying to figure out what's going on here, when you're closely studying the situation you're in, maybe the location you're in, whatever it happens to be, you're looking at what's going on and you are going to try and figure it out. The game specifically gives you a list of 6 questions that you can ask from. I like to say there's so many times that you feel like it doesn't fit. Ask the question that you want the answer to, because that can just work too, right? For example, we've got things here like what happened here recently, what is about to happen, what should I be on the lookout for? If really what you're trying to figure out is, where did the thief go? You can just ask, can I tell where the thief went? And I can give you the reasons or the clues that got you there, that help you figure that thing out. So that the discern realities is really, man, what's going on here? It's not obvious. My character can figure this out, even if I can't. So let's do this and ask the GM questions to get those, to get the information that I'm sure there's something else happening. And the other part of that is spout lore. This is one where the character says, I know something about this. And then they roll plus intelligence. And if they roll successfully, then I, as the GM, tell them something either just interesting or interesting and useful about the thing that their character knows. So one example here is, say you see a monster out in the distance. You could use discern realities to try and figure out what kind of monster it is. Or maybe as the ranger who's a monster hunter studies monsters and knows about monsters, Eli chooses to spout lore. Based on all of the information I know about monsters, I know what that is. And then you roll. And if you're successful, I tell you exactly, yes, you knew what it was. Here's what you knew. I might ask you how you knew it. I might ask, is that from a book you read or from a previous hunting expedition or something like that? But that's one way for your character to kind of speak things into the world. You know something. and you force me to tell you something about it because of the intelligence roll that you have on your for your character. Then probably the only other one I see used regularly is the aid or interfere, and that's the one that helps when you have bonds with somebody. So you're encouraged based on your bonds to either aid or interfere. Now, when we choose the help or hinder, there's been maybe 2 times, if I remember right, where somebody actually tried to interfere with what another player was doing, and usually the 2 times I can remember, it came down to the bond, right? So you have, we'll go with that, the thief bond of blank and I have a ongoing con, right? And when you see that your partner in that con is about to do something to expose it, you can try and interfere. You can actually impose a penalty on their roll to stop that from happening. And that would be a way for you to actually get experience because you fulfilled that bond. You did something that went along with it. So that's one of the only ways I've seen interfere used. Almost always, it's the aid, right? You're helping somebody so that they get an extra +1 on their roll. That's the idea typically.
So it doesn't have to be with somebody you have a bond with. Just if you do, you get the plus.
Yeah, exactly. Your roll is always 0 if you have no bonds, or 0 if you have no modifiers. But when the modifier is bond, it's however many bonds you have with that character that you're aiding or interfering. Okay. Then let's go to the special moves a little farther down. The ones that we'll be using most often. One definitely end of session, but I'm going to talk about that one towards the end because we'll do actually a little end of session for this session just to see what that looks like. Level up. Whenever we do a level, you'll have the idea is it's almost like saying I can take a long rest and level up if I have enough experience, just the way it feels. As long as you have enough time to do what you think the level up needs to accomplish. So say you're using an advanced move that's going to give you essentially a multi-class, be able to use something from another class. You might say that takes longer and you might need a game world month to do it. I've got to go off in the woods to train with a druid in order to learn how to shapeshift or something like that. But then there's other things where it's just like arcane armor, where as long as you have a spell prepared, you get +2 to armor. That could be, well, I learned how to manipulate magic this way in a day, right? It really depends. It's all contextual. So with the level up, you'll be able to go through this, add a level and then go through that wizard kind of like we just did and choose a new move that you can add. And that would be from the back of your character sheet. So that'll kind of happen regularly. I am not averse to doing level ups in the middle of a session. If you already knew what you wanted and think it would be cool right now, then I'm cool doing that. Typically, though, it's the kind of thing that you throw in between adventures, or at least in between sessions. Making camp. Making camp is really just, you're going to settle in to rest for X period of time. You'll consume a ration, and then you decide on watch. And when you do that, it essentially is, when you decide to make that watch, it's like invite random encounter here. Of course, there could be a real encounter that was already set up, but it's one of those that just invite something random into the session. Let's see. Take watch. We'll take watch when you make camp. And that's kind of what I was just talking about. You describe who's taking the watch, and they'll roll and see if anything happens. Last breath. So last breath, when you've reached 0 hit points, when you are dying, you catch a glimpse of what lies beyond the black gates of Death's kingdom. Now, it says I'll describe it, and a lot of times I'll just try to describe it based on something you've said about your character. Right? So especially like for Randy, where he's got a deity. It's the goddess of health and regeneration. He's going to show up and probably see that deity when he goes to Death's door. But when you do that, it's time then to make a deal with Death. Death's going to find out if you're ready to stay in the world or if you're just done. So if you get a 10+ on that, you actually cheat Death, and you're kind of probably unconscious or bleeding or something, depending on what was killing you at the time. On a 7 to 9, Death will actually offer you a bargain. And what that translates to is, as the GM, I'll say, or I'll give something to your character. I'll probably type it out so it's something that you and your character can deal with. But it might be something like, I've used in the past, there was a guy playing someone who didn't like to kill. And I told him, as part of your deal with death, you can live as long as you kill 4 souls for death. Right. So you're forcing the character maybe to do something they wouldn't normally do, because death wants something out of it. If you're getting back in there and there's a price to pay, we're going to come up with something. And then, of
Rest in
course,
peace, August.
if you roll a 6-, then you're ready to pass over into Death's realm, and it's time to get another character ready. Right. At that point, it is real death. So it becomes a thing when you go to, when you're in that last breath state. There's a complete reality that as soon as that happens, as soon as that ogre hits you in the head with that club that one last time, your character could end right there, or you could just be knocked out and kind of hanging on for dear life. So we'll definitely get to something like that. Randy, you had something, or was it just another level up for Jason?
Oh no, I'm just saying rest in peace, August, because that was August Lescott who was offered like kill 4 people. He's like, no, I'd rather die.
Yep. And then I'll mention a couple of things on here as far as the special moves that may or may not come up, and it will really depend on how we end up playing. Bolster. So you could be spending time in, as it says, in study, meditation, hard practice, so something like between adventures. Maybe you're studying up for the next round of monster hunting as the ranger, and you're studying the weaknesses of a certain type of mammoth or whatever, right? The dire mammoth of the North Forest, and you're figuring out how to go kill that thing, and you spend a lot of time preparing for it. When you go to do that thing, you actually get bonuses for it. You've spent time preparing for it. You would add a +1 for anything you'd prepared for. And that can be very useful. But what I find typically is we don't spend a lot of downtime, right? We're trying to get from one adventure to figure out the thing about the next one, to figure out the thing about the next one. So that one may or may not come into play. Carouse can be fun if you're treating it as, like, at the end of the adventure, you're going into town and buying everyone a drink. That's what carouse does. You can get good things out of that by befriending new NPCs, gaining useful information, things that can move you on to the next. And then recruit. We've done it a couple of times, but it's mainly finding somebody to go along with the party. We've got 5, and I don't think there's any real need to bring along an NPC unless you guys think it would be fun, right? And then in which case, yes, we'll tag along Rappy's caretaker, right? The guy who picks up after the Velociraptor. Just walk around with a big dino pooper scooper all the time.
Everybody needs a porter.
Right, you can get a hireling. Then probably the last one that actually does happen frequently enough, undertaking a perilous journey. And that's really when, anytime we're going from one place to another, we're going to treat it as a perilous journey, because in general, like I said, the world is out to get you, even though you can stand your own. Without a doubt, these characters can stand their own, especially as a party, even united or not. There's still enough to be able to handle the world. So almost everywhere you go, it'll be more like most likely that we'll undertake a perilous journey as well. And what that means is you'll have people assigned to roles. Somebody's going to be point, somebody's going to be taking care of the rations, somebody's going to be making sure that you actually have the best route there. And failing any one of those means you use up more rations, or it takes longer to get there, or something bad happens along the way, etc. So that kind of will happen. And before I talk about end of session, what I'd like to do is pretty much go around the table and ask people a couple of questions. Are you comfortable with the character you've gotten so far? And do you think you're ready to, like, jump into that character? What do you think about that, Jason?
Yep, I'm good to go.
Yeah,
Very comfortable.
so you've got an idea of the first time we meet the wizard. You've got a general idea of what he's going to look like and how he's going to act towards people, that kind of thing. Cool. There are some big events, and I had planned on making this little questionnaire type of thing that I was going to send through Messenger, and I forgot. But there's some really high level things to think about as far as personality for your character. These things are likely to happen. How would my character react in the face of a chance of immense wealth. How would my character react in the face of a chance of immense popularity or acceptance or something like that? Think of really, really big. These situations are going to happen, and it's a good idea to think ahead of time. How might my character react if a companion is killed? Those kind of things can get you in the mood of how your character acts day to day, because you have an expectation of what they might act like in a really big event, really big scenario. Aster, what are you thinking about when it comes to the thief?
I am definitely. What's that?
You think you're comfortable to step into that skin?
I definitely think I'm comfortable with like the character itself. Definitely going through some of the specific things that the thief gets. I am excited to think more about like the more, like you said, kind of like the more like personality and like personal goal type aspect of the character. Mechanics wise, I'm definitely feeling pretty comfortable and confident to step into that role.
Cool. Have you thought any more about those special bonds that you might have and how you might introduce those?
I'm still kind of thinking. I haven't actually entered any in yet. Like I said, if anybody specifically wants to do one of those, I'm happy to discuss it. But I'm kind of thinking in the background about them as well.
And
my character's a blank slate, so whatever you guys.
Yeah, I encourage.
I stole something from Jason. It's his memory.
Or you could have gotten Jason to help you steal something because he doesn't know any better. He's trying to figure things out, and he has skills.
You might have convinced him that was the right thing to do.
There are laws?
Yeah, there are. What?
That's illegal?
But I definitely encourage everybody to reach out to anybody else here. The only thing I ask is if what you discuss is going to be present in the game, that I just know about it so I can make sure that it's present without adverse surprise, because you may have figured out that your con is to trick the mayor of this town into giving up power, right? And if I don't know about that, then I can't let it happen, or I can't stop it from happening. So it's important that I just know about the things that will affect the world, things that just add flavor to the world. You don't have to tell me about them till they actually happen. All right, so that you're feel free to keep some things back. Like Jason mentioned, the spells. It really doesn't matter to me at all what spells he's chosen until one gets used. And at that point, that's where I'm expecting, Jason to have some kind of reveal about how the wizard maybe casts it, or what it looks like, or who knows what. But the idea that you got something back there sounds great.
Yeah, but it's not something that's going to take him out of the world, because he knows the spells, he knows how they work, and they're in-game mechanics. So that's something that is just a flavor thing for the characters, and even maybe for myself as far as the reactionary time of these things happening with the character, which I think will be fun. But yeah, always err on the side of caution, and if you're not sure, just tell the GM anyways.
Yep.
If it's flavor, if you're not sure if it's flavor, if it's world breaking, just always best to, as a GM, it's always best to err with the GM and be like, hey, by the way.
Definitely. So Randy, what about the cleric?
Well, I'm totally getting there. I just I have more questions about spells. Like I was reading up. I guess the wizard for Jason, if he was to choose him, would have to choose like 3 spells of the list, but apparently the cleric can choose all of them. But I don't know, and then choose one spell a day, or how does that even work? I'm not really.
So just like in Dungeons and Dragons, from what I understand, is the wizard, I have to take time to prepare my spells. You know all your spells, but you have to select which ones are available to you that day.
Correct.
Okay.
So and you can also keep a running list. Like you can say every day I'm preparing these, and if you leave it at that, and if the next day for whatever reason you want to change one, then you would you'd make the commune starting move and refresh based on that.
Yeah, I have to learn I have to find the spells, copy them into my spell book, and do other things. You, as a cleric, you get your stuff from your god. You just have to say, I have so much magical energy this day. I'm going to prepare for these here in case I need them.
Okay, and where do I find how many cantrips and spells I have at that time? Because I didn't really see.
So for the rotes, you always have them.
Yep.
Okay.
And then when it comes to spells, when you do the commune starting move, you get new spells of your choice whose total levels do not exceed your own level +1. That's a long way of saying right now 2.
So 2 spells. Okay.
And since spells go from first to third level, you can't pick a second level spell. Therefore, you're going to choose 2 first level spells. So you'll have all 3 rotes and 2 first level spells. And when it comes to like spell slots, there's no such thing here. In Dungeon World, the way it works is you continue to cast the spell until something goes wrong to where you can no longer cast the spell. And it won't be because you ran out of spell slots. It'll be when you go to cast, you roll a 6-, and that failure could be that you forget the spell for the day. And you'll have to commune again with your deity to get it back. Or for the wizard, you'll have to read it out of the spell book to study it, to remember it again, to get it back. And you can also, as you're casting on a 7 to 9 roll, you can choose to take a -1 ongoing and still have the success of the spell that you just tried to cast. So it means the longer you keep casting, the harder it is to cast. It's like weakening magic as you go. So there are different ways around that. But when it comes to what spells for the cleric, you're able to choose from all of the ones at which you have access. So in this case, like I said, you won't have access to third level spells until you can do 3 levels worth of spells. But until then, you have all first level choosable, and you can choose 2 of them on any given day or any given time you commune with your deity. Okay. And then the rotes, you always get those.
Okay, so other than that question that I had for it, thank you for answering that, Jason and Joe. I got a pretty decent concept of what I think the character looks like, what they're wearing, where they're probably going to be at. I just need to get an idea with the rest of the gang on how they would meet properly, and I don't know, just get some bonds and stuff going with those characters.
Okay, cool. Eli,
I'm raring to go. I think I got a pretty good handle on things right now with your explanation, and most of the information that I need is already just like listed there. Hey, this does this, this does this.
Yeah.
Some of the animal companion stuff is a little vague, but I'm pretty sure I can just read the Dungeon World PDF and get a better understanding of it.
Well, actually, there is no more explanation.
Really?
Dungeon World PDF is, I want to say, the one that I shared, I think is 84 pages, double spaced on like paperback size with really big margins. It's not a lot in there. It's really just guidelines around pretty much everything I've said tonight and a bit more. Like it has some descriptions of what some creatures you might find in the world would be like, and what their tendencies are and moves they might have, things like that. But the things that are specific to the characters are only found on the character sheet. So if you don't have a good description the way you want to understand it, then you and I just need to look it over and say, this should work this way for Eli, and poof, that's about it. If it's something that doesn't make sense, we'll make sense out of it so that it works for you.
Yeah, that was something that took me by surprise as well, because I actually downloaded the actual 400 page Dungeon World thing, and all the stuff is just excess stuff on there for players. But my understanding is they kept it vague on purpose to get the mechanics out of the way. That way, you're not restricted by it only works at this time or this way or this way here. It's vague on purpose, so that way you talk with the DM and you guys determine what works and what you're trying to do.
Yep. Okay. And if you notice, almost every one of the moves kind of starts with the phrase "when you do blank," right? When you, like the one we're about to talk about, when you reach the end of a session, or hack and slash, when you attack something in melee, volley, when you shoot, when you take time to aim at something and shoot. It's all based on you performing an action, and that action is going to be substantial enough or significant enough that it can change the course of the story. And once that happens, and I should say fiction, not story, it can change the course of the world that we're living in. And if that happens, then we want to roll to see, wow, what's going to happen next? You're going to try this really special thing. What happens next? And that's what that roll is really to help determine. So almost every roll is based on you are in the middle of an action, or you're declaring an action, a thing that you're about to do. That's when, based on what you do, the thing that comes next is what everyone anticipates. So it's not so much that you're really good at hitting stuff. It's what happens when you go do that. What happens when you start doing those attacks? How do you treat Again, like I said, do you just swing at them, or do you describe that all the time? I swing for their left arm because that's just what I do every time, whatever it may be. We just throw those things in there. And to Jason's point, as vague as it is, you then take that and kind of push it into the fiction. I can say, again, using the example of your shield gets destroyed. Well, now the shield might have gotten destroyed, and the bad guys see you're more vulnerable, so they might start going after you first, even though you're standing in defense of somebody. So that type of thing. So what I want to do is I want to read through the end of session move, and that's how we'll end this session. And we'll use this to actually mark a couple of experience. So we should be able to go through that as well. So the way it works is when you reach the end of a session, choose one of your bonds that you feel is resolved, whether that's completely explored, no longer relevant, or otherwise. We're going to kind of go past that one because we're still looking at the bonds.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have like all my bonds checked off from just this game.
Nice. And it's all Randy, right?
It's all Randy related.
And then once you've gone through those bonds, once you've talked through that,
my pleasure, buddy.
The next thing you do is you look at your alignment. And for here, again, we haven't actually played the characters yet, so we're going to kind of skip over the alignment. But the idea is, if you think you fulfilled the statement you've got in your alignment, or the drive or the goal you've got in your alignment, you'll get an experience for it. But then once we get past those two, the bonds and the alignment, everybody gets these three questions, and for each one we answer a yes to. Everybody marks an experience. So the first one, did we learn something new and important about the world? I'd say yes, in that it is existent now, right?
Yeah.
And everything
that
about
is quite important to know that the world exists.
Yep. So everybody on your character sheet, you can go to where experience is and just press up. And you'll see there's actually a green circle that starts filling in around the thingy. And that's how you know how close you are to leveling. When the circle's full, you'll be able to level up.
Yay.
Yeah, so we get that. And then did we overcome a notable monster or enemy? Not yet. Because I don't think anyone had an enemy yet.
The enemy was ignorance to the game.
Yeah, we overcame a lot of puns tonight. A lot of bad puns.
I agree with Randy here.
Everybody gets a point except for Randy.
What did Randy say there that you agree with, Eli?
I said the enemy was ignorance to the game.
Ooh. Did we overcome that?
Probably not.
I believe so.
Okay, you know what? Because Randy said that, let's mark an experience. We overcame it. Except maybe Chris, although everyone gets it. You don't have to actually learn something new. And did we loot a memorable treasure? At this point, I'm going to say no, because nobody got any real equipment yet. Unless
we got knowledge.
Isn't the memories we made as friends treasure enough for everything?
Indeed.
Look,
all right,
all I'm going to say is
the
that
moments that we've shared.
Everybody should have 2 experience marked.
Yes.
all I'm going to say is that my character now has equipment that they didn't have before that is vital to their profession.
Is that a treasure, though?
I said 2, and I meant to say 3, because I was going to say we had 2. What I was going to say, and this would have been funnier if I had finished it and not listened to Eli, I guess. But what I was going to say was we each get 2 because we answered the 3 questions yes. And of course, I think that would have been funnier than me correcting myself. And here we are. Anyway, the joke didn't fly even the second time. Anyway,
so we lose an experience point from that.
I'm losing from that one for sure.
All right, so we're all down to 1.
Is it a lose a win in this one?
I don't know.
If you failed, you get an experience point, Joe.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Give yourself an experience point.
Nice. So everybody will start our first actual play session with 3 experience, and it is 7 plus your level to level up. So we're almost half of the way there to get to level 2. And again, you'll see by the end of that first session, if you have gone and worked with one of the bonds you have, you'll get an experience, and it just has to be 1. More than 1 doesn't give you more experience, although it's cool to explore more than 1. As long as you've done at least 1, you'll get an experience for it. And then if you've done something in line with your alignment, you'll get another experience. And then if we have so much stuff that we find out about the world that we're answering these questions, essentially you'll get 5 experience per session if you're pushing your character, plus any failures you roll during the session. So each 6 minus is a mark of experience on your sheet as well. So depending on how you roll and how exciting the session is, we could be ready to level up on almost any given session. Kind of neat.
Awesome.
that is what I wanted to cover tonight. And of course, for next time, one of the things that we'll be trying to do in between the two sessions as homework for everybody is now I get to take some of the stuff that you guys have told me and fit it into the arcs that I'm already have built. So one of the things that the GM has to do is come up with their own things that are out there. There are grim portents, there are impending dooms, and these things are vaguely defined so that once I get information from you guys, now I know there's a goddess of health and restoration. So now that's going to no doubt play a part in one of the impending dooms that will face the party.
Bethany the Pure.
Yep. So that kind of thing will play into it. And what you'll see is as we go, there will be some link to something that you've told me about your character in just about everything we're doing, because your characters make up the world and I'm just filling in some of the blanks to make it a little more full. So we'll be doing that. I have a lot of that work to do. And what I ask you guys to do is kind of flesh out what your bonds mean between you and another character. And I will give you kind of a scenario where we'll be starting. And my expectation at this point is rather than try to ask you guys collectively to come up with how your characters might be together, I'll come up with the reason they're together if you want to come up with the reason anybody might know each other. Right, so I'll start with some kind of, a trope of you all receive an invitation to the royal ball kind of thing, and you're all there together. It won't be that, but it's going to be something cheesy enough that we'll have a good start to why the characters are together. And then I just need you guys to come up with why they might have the bonds they have. So associate separately offline, catch me whenever you have any questions with that. And I will provide you, probably in the next couple of days, I'll provide you the pretense under which the characters are getting together so that you can work that into your own story. And why, you might even be traveling together with somebody to whatever the event is, or you're kidnapped at the same time, whatever it may be.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
All right. And there's a whole lot of me talking tonight. It's the first time first time in a while I've gone through the whole session and I haven't even had half of my water. So it's like, man, I'm thirsty too, right? Because I'm yapping the whole damn time. But what you'll see as we're playing is I'll probably have about as equal a speaking part as anybody else, because you guys will be doing a lot more without having to roll dice and look up numbers as often. There'll be a lot more, in my opinion, overall, it turns out to be a lot more interaction. So we'll definitely have that. And other people will be able to talk a heck of a lot more than you got to today. With that, Randy's got a squeaky there. That's awesome.
Yeah, I realized I didn't draw anything this time around.
Any questions or any closing thoughts on what we're calling session 0 for this game?
Nope.
I got
just getting started.
Yeah, so just so everybody knows, you could click on other people's avatars and pop open their character sheet so you can kind of see what bonds they have listed. So if you don't know who you could be connected to, you can at least see what they have listed. Like, oh, I might fit that one, and then you could kind of, chat it up or whatever.
Yeah. Now, I will just add to that that's a setting in Foundry where I added that all players are observers of all character sheets. So it allows you to see it. You shouldn't be able to modify it, but I will say that, like, for example, if somebody has a secret bond that they only want to share with one other character, you respect that if you happen to peek in on that character sheet and you're not part of that bond. Just kind of respect that piece because it might have been a secret. That's all. But yeah, it's definitely a good idea to be able to look at
maybe just post in chat before we all check on bonds and say like, hey, don't check mine. Any people? Right?
Yeah, you definitely do that too.
Yeah, and if anyone who's open to it, just say, oh yeah, you can check mine. No worries.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say, yeah, it's going to be an open invitation for me as well. I can't think of any secrets that I want to have, and just as soon as I do, I'll definitely make sure. Hey, back off my character right now.
All mine are going to be secrets aligned with Ray's character, which is I stab all of our people in the neck, in the chest with a short sword.
With short swords that belong to the city guard.
Yep.
Oh, now here's the con you have going with the thief. You'll only stab people when they're sleeping, so the thief has
exactly
to sleep first.
Yeah.
My con is to con the con person here and actually kill her in her sleep.
Perfect.
Anything else we'd like to add in or ask before we wrap this one up, guys?
Not I.
No,
Oh,
not at this time.
right. Well, with that in mind, I think I might be able to click on the right button to get the closing going. And for now, we can all just wrap it up and say, all right.
Bye-bye.
Adios.
The preceding podcast was brought to you by One Joe Young. You can find us online at adventuresfromtheshed.com.
I think Randy's going to level up this again.
So when my jokes fail, I guess that means I get a point, right?
No, I get a point if your jokes fail, not you.
But